Buchi Emecheta's The Joys of Motherhood, 1979, is a profound and emotionally charged novel that offers a sharp critique of gender roles, colonialism, motherhood, and tradition in Nigerian society. Set primarily in colonial and post-colonial Nigeria, the novel chronicles the life of Nnu Ego, a traditional Igbo woman, whose entire sense of identity and self-worth is tied to her ability to bear children, especially sons. Through Nnu Ego's story, Emecheta interrogates the romanticized ideal of motherhood, exposing the emotional, physical, and social burdens placed on women. Far from being joyful, motherhood becomes a site of suffering, sacrifice, and societal exploitation. Emecheta's feminist narrative disrupts traditional African values and shows how colonial urbanization further deepens the marginalization of women, especially mothers. Setting: the novel is set in Lagos and Abuja, Nigeria, during the 1930s to 1950s, a period marked by British colonial rule, World War II, and the early stirrings of Nigerian independence. The contrasting settings of rural Abuja and urban Lagos symbolize the clash between tradition and modernity. Main character: Nnu Ego, the protagonist, an Igbo woman whose life revolves around her role as a mother. She endures immense personal hardship in pursuit of societal approval through motherhood. Other important characters include Naif, Nnu Ego's husband, a laundryman in Lagos. He is traditional, self-centered, and ineffective as a provider. Adaku, Nnu Ego's co-wife, who eventually defies patriarchal norms to live independently. Nnu Ego's children, particularly Oshia and Adam, whose successes and struggles frame Nnu Ego's sacrifices. Narrative overview: the novel opens with Nnu Ego attempting suicide on the Carter Bridge in Lagos after the death of her infant son. This dramatic beginning sets the tone. Motherhood, in Nnu Ego's experience, is not joyful, but filled with loss, isolation, and despair. The narrative then backtracks to Nnu Ego's origins. She is the daughter of Nwokocha Agbadi, a wealthy and proud chief in Abuja, and his slave wife, Ona. From her early years, Nnu Ego is raised to believe that a woman's value lies in her fertility and the success of her children, particularly sons. Nnu Ego's first marriage ends in disgrace because she cannot conceive. She is returned to her father and eventually married off to Naif, a man she finds repulsive. She moves to Lagos and begins a long journey of poverty, childbearing, emotional neglect, and relentless sacrifice. Over the years, Nnu Ego bears many children. Her entire life revolves around caring for them, often alone, as Naif is either absent or incompetent. She sacrifices her own needs, endures abuse, and works menial jobs to support her children's education and future. However, her sacrifices go largely unrewarded. Her sons, particularly Oshia, grow up to reject traditional values, seeking Western-style success and individual freedom. Nnu Ego is left behind, disappointed and lonely. The novel ends with Nnu Ego's death in obscurity, far from the communal reverence promised to mothers. Her children do not attend her funeral, and the narrator remarks bitterly that while she was buried, with all the ceremony befitting a great mother, she had no one by her side in life. Themes and analysis: 1. Motherhood as a burden. The central irony of the novel is embedded in its title, The Joys of Motherhood. Emecheta systematically dismantles the myth that motherhood is a woman's highest achievement or source of fulfillment. For Nnu Ego, motherhood is endless sacrifice, with little appreciation or personal happiness. She is taught that her only value lies in her womb, yet her children grow up to neglect or resent her. Her life of hardship is romanticized by society, but not supported by tangible respect or care. Emecheta shows how African traditions glorify motherhood while exploiting mothers, leaving women like Nnu Ego physically drained and emotionally isolated. 2. Gender roles and patriarchy. Emecheta critiques patriarchal structures in both traditional and colonial Nigerian society. NNU ego is controlled by male authority figures, her father, her husbands, and later, her sons. She has little agency in choosing her marriage, her place of residence, or how to raise her children. Naif, as the patriarch, enjoys social power despite being irresponsible. When he takes a second wife, Adaku, without NNU ego's consent, the system justifies it as tradition. Even her sons, educated in Western values, continue to uphold male entitlement, disregarding her sacrifices. Adaku's eventual defection from the household, choosing to become a trader and raise her daughters independently, stands as a feminist act of resistance. She challenges the belief that a woman's life is incomplete without sons or a husband. 3. Colonialism and cultural dislocation. Colonial Lagos serves as a backdrop for the disintegration of traditional support systems. In Abuja, extended families and communal child rearing ease the burden on mothers. In Lagos, NNU ego is isolated, forced to care for many children alone in an economically exploitative urban setting. The influence of British colonialism further exacerbates gender and class inequalities. Men like Naif are reduced to colonial subjects, laundering clothes for white employers, while women bear the brunt of economic survival. War and colonial labor demands disrupt family structures and deepen poverty. Moreover, Western education and modern values alienate the younger generation from their parents. NNU ego's son Oshia wants to study abroad, disregards arranged marriage, and refuses to send money home. Colonialism, Emecheta implies, has uprooted indigenous values while offering little in return for the women left behind. 4. Tradition versus modernity. The novel explores the tensions between traditional Igbo customs and the forces of modernity. In Abuja, NNU ego is expected to bear children, especially sons, to maintain the family lineage. Motherhood is her passport to honor. However, in modern Lagos, these values clash with economic reality and personal desire. Traditional gender roles prove impractical in the face of urban poverty. The younger generation, educated, cosmopolitan, and influenced by Western ideals, views tradition as an obstacle. NNU ego becomes a relic of a vanishing world, caught between the expectations of her upbringing and the harsh realities of post-colonial life. 5. Identity and self-sacrifice. NNU ego's identity is completely tied to her children. She internalizes societal beliefs that motherhood defines her worth. As a result, she sacrifices everything, comfort, happiness, personal dreams, for her children's future. Yet, this identity leaves her vulnerable and unfulfilled. When her children grow up and lead their own lives, she is left with nothing. Her personal self, apart from being a mother, never had space to develop. Emecheta uses NNU ego's story to highlight the psychological and emotional costs of self-erasure, especially for women raised to believe that personal happiness is secondary to motherhood. Symbolism. The Carter Bridge. The novel opens and closes with the bridge, symbolizing transition and despair. It marks NNU ego's emotional breaking point and frames the novel's cyclical portrayal of suffering. Children. They represent both hope and entrapment. While they give NNU ego purpose, they also become the very source of her suffering. Lagos versus Abuja. These locations symbolize the conflict between modernity and tradition, urban alienation versus communal support. Funeral rites. The elaborate burial NNU ego receives contrasts sharply with the loneliness of her life, highlighting societal hypocrisy. Narrative style. Emecheta uses a third-person omniscient narrator with limited commentary, allowing NNU ego's actions and inner thoughts to speak for themselves. The prose is clear, restrained, and emotionally resonant, creating a tone of quiet tragedy. Dialogues often capture cultural idioms, especially among the Igbo characters, while descriptions of Lagos are rich with urban detail, enhancing the contrast between rural and modern life. The narrative structure is mostly linear, punctuated by flashbacks and dreams, which deepen the reader's understanding of Nnu Ego's psychological state and cultural history. Historical and cultural context. Set in the era of British colonialism, The Joys of Motherhood reflects the socio-political upheaval of Nigeria before independence. The introduction of Western education, Christianity, and wage labor disrupts traditional gender roles and family structures. Emecheta, writing in the 1970s, addresses both the historical oppression of African women and the contemporary feminist movement. Her work critiques both colonial patriarchy and indigenous misogyny, calling for a redefinition of womanhood beyond biological motherhood. The novel is particularly significant in the canon of African feminist literature, offering a nuanced perspective on how race, gender, and class intersect in the post-colonial experience. Conclusion: The Joys of Motherhood is a devastating critique of the myths surrounding motherhood, especially in patriarchal and post-colonial African societies. Through the tragic life of Nnu Ego, Buchi Emecheta exposes how social structures glorify maternal sacrifice while offering women no real support, agency, or fulfillment. The novel is both personal and political. It challenges readers to question what society demands of women, what is lost when identity is reduced to reproduction, and what it means to live a life where love and duty bring more pain than joy. By blending intimate storytelling with powerful social critique, Emecheta created a work that remains deeply relevant, reminding us that the true measure of motherhood, and of womanhood, must be rooted in autonomy, dignity, and mutual respect.